Welcome back to Attack the Block, the series all about animation-centric programming blocks. Today's episode is all about Miguzi, a weekday afternoon block that aired on Cartoon Network in the middle of the 2000s. At its surface, it looks and sounds simple enough. A casual kid host, a great lineup of shows, all just after school. But the block was caught in the middle of a shifting Cartoon Network. By the turn of the century, Cartoon Network had become an animation powerhouse. The classic Hanna-Barbera and MGM cartoons that the network relied on at launch were joined by the WB animated library after media conglomerate Time Warner merged with Turner Broadcasting in 1996. Simultaneously, Cartoon Network's own animation teams were debuting the finished product of a multi-year plan for in-house animation, kickstarting the Cartoon lineup. Just 1 year later, the launch of Toonami would put the network front and center in anime's growing influence in America, and many popular Kids WB series joined the network as well. Films were also given focus, as Cartoon Theater, a block focused around animated films, debuted in 1998. Cartoon Network had grown substantially from the rerun style of its starting years to the premier home of a vast library of animation. A library that wasn't just aimed at a particular age group either, but instead all ages, whether young or old. This was undoubtedly for many one of the highest eras of quality for the channel. But the arrival of the 21st century brought major changes. Boomerang expanded from a programming block to its own channel. This gave the wider collection of classic cartoons its own 24-hour network, but concurrently, Cartoon Network began airing modern cartoons and expanding Toonami.
It's all kids out of the pool for Adult Swim.
The debut of Adult Swim in 2001 was a double-edged sword. On one hand, the block quickly rose to become one of the best places for experimental adult humor and adult animation. But the block would also be the start of a forced splitting of the channel's audience. By 2002, Pokemon and additional Kids WB series landed on Cartoon Network alongside a growing lineup of cartoons. In 2003, Cartoon Fridays was replaced with Fridays, a block that, unlike its predecessor, constantly emphasized its heavy focus on the children's demographic. Within the following year, Toonami weekday afternoon, Saturday morning, and Saturday afternoon blocks were in the process of elimination. From that point forward, Toonami would be locked strictly to evenings and overnight hours. This meant the mission of moving teen and above programming to later in the evening and aiming the rest of the daylight hours at the kid to preteen demographic was much further along than when Adult Swim launched in 2001. Yes, the network was still an animation powerhouse, but unlike the programming format of Cartoon Network just before the turn of the century, teens and adults were now expected to watch later, and the influx of Kids WB programming mixed with cartoons and other acquired content prioritized the kid demographic. With Toonami leaving the weekday afternoon time slot, Cartoon Network could mold something new that could fit the demographic it aimed toward. The job of molding this block was given to William Street, a studio that needs no introduction, but will get one for those of you who are uninitiated. William Street was, and to this day is, critical to Cartoon Network. Not only was the studio an output capital for some of Cartoon Network's most iconic late-night cartoons, the studio was the creative force behind Adult Swim and Toonami. Blocks known not only for their programming, but the experience they gave their audiences, specifically through bumpers and shorts. Executives weren't just tossing a project to some random group. They reached out to their A-team, one that hit home runs. This was not going to be a generic time filler. In the vein of Toonami, this new afternoon block featured a CGI designed setting and characters that would appear in bumpers, interstitials, commercial breaks, and promotional content. Set in what could only be described as an undersea lounge, Our host Aaron played, announced, and watched TV alongside a number of oddly designed aliens. These aliens by name were Remo, Base, Tweet, Dr. Monitor, Big Stalks, Trey, Flip, Curly, and Yoke. Some of these aliens could be classified as aliens, but others were shaped like electronic devices, like Remo, a sentient TV remote alien, Base, a speaker-shaped alien, and Dr. Monitor, a television screen-shaped alien. A few bumpers featured Salty, an older man that would show up in a scuba suit and sounded like a pirate.
I just love the ocean. Yeah, that's why I hang out under the sea with these knuckleheads. But there are other cool creatures down here too, right guys? So, I've asked my pal Old Salty to drop by and show us around. Here he comes now.
Ahoy, mateys!
Hey Salty, what's shaking?
Well, there be lots of creatures in the big blue. The giant sea turtle, but to grow giant size, now that's really neat. Well, me mateys, that be it for me. Been here too long.
Over the lifetime of the block, newer aliens, who were usually duplicate designs of introduced aliens, joined, including a second Tweet and Base. So, in early 2004, Cartoon Network began advertising the replacement for the afternoon edition of Toonami, the world's first glimpse of Miguzi.
Cut it out, Trey. The next show's about to start.
Miguzi launched on April 19th, 2004, airing weekdays from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. This complemented sister block Kids WB, which ran its weekday afternoon block from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on the WB network, and led into Cartoons Fridays block, which started at 7 p.m., of course on Friday. The block debuted with Totally Spies, Code Lyoko, 2003's iteration of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Teen Titans. All 4 launch cartoons were anime-inspired, and 2 of which, Code Lyoko and Totally Spies, came from French animation studios. The success of Miguzi prompted an expansion, starting on June 20th, that would air the block from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Sundays. The Sunday lineup started as nothing but reruns from the block's weekday lineup, but William Street gave the Sunday time slot something interesting to entice the audience.
Sunday afternoons, Miguzi's giving you a wheel of a deal. One spin of the Wheel of Goose gets you the winning show 4 times in a row. Will the wheel reveal Code Lyoko, Totally Spies, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Teen Titans? You'll have to tune in to find out. Then groove on 4 episodes of the gooziest show of the day. Sunday afternoons from 3 to 5. Only on Miguzi.
The Wheel of Goose turned the Sunday time slot into a mini marathon of one of the 4 series aired on Miguzi the prior week. In September, Cartoon Network's quarterly ratings release showed Miguzi's strength since launch. While viewership ratings from the kids demographic increased as much as 25%, the real jump came from the age 6 to 11 girl demographic, of which ratings grew by 67%. The arrival of autumn prompted the block's first schedule change. Code Lyoko was dropped, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles moved up to 5:30, and Transformers Energon took the Turtles' old spot. Totally Spies and Teen Titans continued to bookend the block. Unlike the original schedule, this lineup lasted only a month, starting in early October and ending in November. Later in November, the 6 p.m. time slot was changed. The introduction of Static Shock to Miguzi cannot be understated. Static Shock had never debuted on Cartoon Network until its arrival here on Miguzi, and it was the first series on the block that originally debuted on Kids WB. With both Kids WB and Miguzi based from the same parent company, there was, up to 2005, a respectable baton pass from Kids WB's afternoon block to Miguzi, which started immediately after on cable compadre Cartoon Network. But the expansion of Kids WB programming on Miguzi and the block's continued success in doing so created a sort of parasitic relationship between the two blocks, one seemingly stealing the best content from the other. This was highlighted significantly in 2005.
Ed, Edd, and Eddy is now. Then it's time for more Ed, Edd, and Eddy. This is Cartoon Network.
Turner Broadcasting kicked off the year with an announcement that was long in development but was now finally official. Cartoon Network would be treated as two different cable networks. The kid-to-tween targeted content of daylight hours severed from the adult-centric programming of Adult Swim, which expanded to its 6 a.m. finality that it continues to have today, beginning in March 2005. This separation allowed the network to better target audiences through advertising and officially made Cartoon Network a channel targeted at kids and tweens. The approach of spring brought a brief schedule change. For the first time, one series was given 50% of Miguzi. That series was Static Shock. In April, Cartoon Network reported Miguzi as one of its greatest successes so far in the year. While again, kids overall were tuning into Miguzi, it was the girl demographic whose ratings increased by 143% to that time the prior year. Another schedule change in May shifted Totally Spies out of the time slot it had been in since Miguzi's launch, moved up to 5:30 as newcomer Winx Club preceded it at 5. Before month's end, Time Warner announced the Kids WB weekday block would discontinue at the start of 2006. Kids were prioritizing 24-hour cable networks over broadcast networks' brief afternoon blocks. A summer schedule change brought newcomer Crypto the Superdog, sliding every series into the next time slot, which slid Static Shock off the block. However, the fall 2005 schedule returned Static and Code Lyoko, banishing Winx Club and Crypto. Totally Spies, the only series that had remained on the block since its launch 19 months prior, would not return after November. Miguzi was going through a state of change, beginning with the debut of Yugioh Gx in November, alongside Kids Next Door's introduction.
Get ready for a brand new Yu-Gi-Oh! For real? New characters use new cards in all new duels. That sounds sweet! New episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, weekdays at 5. Give me your best shot! It's a new deal on Miguzi.
This change, in my perspective, was Time Warner truly giving up on Kids WB and prioritizing Cartoon Network. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a Kids WB icon from its arrival in 2001, and while the Kids WB weekday block was already announced for elimination, Kids WB being skipped over instead of invested in would accelerate the block's decline, and more importantly, push kids to Cartoon Network.
Oh man, no problem. I'll just use Accelerate. Smooth, wild boy.
With Kids WB's afternoon block gone, Miguzi moved up to 4 p.m. In January, the block added One Piece, a significant addition to the block as the second anime behind Yugioh Gx. Not only were anime-inspired cartoons on Miguzi, actual anime was now on it as well. May introduced two series that would become mainstays for the block, while also swapping One Piece for Zatch Bell. Ben 10 would become a favorite, but Pokemon would become a constant. Pokemon, like Yu-Gi-Oh!, was an icon known for being on Kids WB, but Pokemon had arrived on Cartoon Network years earlier. Miguzi would be the show's weekday expansion to the channel, and because of its extreme popularity, it would never leave the block. Between summer and fall, Miguzi's bumpers were simplified. Aaron, who had been the show's host since launch, was eliminated, as well as the 3D Undersea Lounge she hosted in. In its place was a cheaper looking, flat blue background. The aliens were still there, but the omission of Aaron still makes little sense. Imagine Toonami without Tom. The last few months of 2006 Miguzi slid series, Code Lyoko, Robot Boy, and the life and times of Juniper Lee in and out of the block, but vastly more time was given to Pokemon, which was given 50% of the block for 2 months. Additionally, Teen Titans ended its run on Miguzi in November. It stood as the most aired series on the block at its closure.
One Piece may seem like it's a pirate show, but it's really a life show. Think about it.
2007 was a turning point, not only for Miguzi, but Cartoon Network. Once a block filled with a diverse library of anime-inspired animation, the final year of Miguzi was scheduled more like an afterthought than an experience. The first week of the year started out okay. The studio that produced Totally Spies had a new series, Team Galaxy. It debuted on Miguzi's 4:30 time slot, but only lasted 1 week. The following week, for the first time, the block only had 2 series, Ben 10 and Pokemon. In my eyes, this was the lowest point for the block. The last number of schedule changes of the year did bring levity, as Xiaolin Showdown, Mucha Lucha, and Naruto even landed on the block. Meanwhile, Cartoon Network was going through the worst public relations nightmare in its near 15-year existence.
Breaking right now at the live desk. Judgment Day for the men behind the hoax which shut down Boston. They sparked fears of terrorism. The marketing executives promoting Aqua Teen Hunger Force on Cartoon Network. Now the city of Boston wants them to pay. But who else is responsible? What was Turner Broadcasting's role in the whole thing?
In an attempt in advertising the upcoming release of Aqua Teen Hunger Force film for theaters, light brights in the design of Moonanites were plastered throughout various American cities. It wasn't an issue until Boston citizens believed them to be bombs. Police and bomb squads were sent out, the city's government and national news media made it a frenzy, and Cartoon Network paid the price, with then-President Jim Samples stepping down in February. Everything rapidly changed, and the network went through another major shift. In February, Fridays was discontinued, closing the door on the only day Cartoon Network aired non-adult focused animation through 12 a.m. Adult Swim controlled a larger piece of airtime. Simultaneously, Cartoon Theater, introduced in 1998, was shuttered on the last day of the month. Miguzi wouldn't make it out of the year either, and on June 1st, 2007, the block aired its final broadcast. On the same day, the Cartoon City era would come to a close, airing its final bumpers. The next 12 months would become one of the darkest eras for the network. Original series from Codename Kids Next Door and Grim Adventures to Juniper Lee and Camp Lazlo, 8 in total, were discontinued. Classic cartoons, including Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, I Am Weasel, and more, were banished from even rerunning. And while Toonami celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2007, just 1 year later, it aired its then final broadcast. Miguzi was one of Cartoon Network's most prominent blocks in the 2000s, caught between the more relaxed Cartoon Network at its launch and strictly for kids format by its end. The block made shows like Totally Spies, Ben 10, and Code Lyoko household names, brought over kids WB series like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Static Shock, but most of all, made watching it an interesting experience. This has been Attack the Block, Episode 8. What do you guys remember about Miguzi? Honestly, I don't remember much at all because I was only 10 when Miguzi ended. So, before I get to the end credits, I want to mention the fact that this Attack the Block lines up almost perfectly with my Snyder era video, which will be linked at the last 30 seconds. The Snyder era runs through directly after the timeline after Miguzi, and then ends, of course, in 2014. So hypothetically, if you've watched this entire video and then followed it up with the Snyder era, you have a general snapshot of Cartoon Network's history from the late 90s all the way up through 2014. Anyway guys, this has been Attack the Block, Episode 8.
on, girls. Right! Yeah, we kick butt!
Let's do it!